and get started. If you would pull down that music, we'll go ahead and get started today. Welcome, everybody. I'm Brent Christensen with the Chamber.
I'm a nurse.
Welcome to our daily action call.
Demand with ECBI.
We appreciate you all joining us. It's Friday, March 27th. We made it. Another week that feels like an entire year. But again, thank you for joining us. You can always follow us on social media, the Chamber's Facebook page. Our Twitter and Instagram accounts are at GSO Chamber. And we always are posting the latest information there, so you'll want to follow us. We also are sending out daily emails to our members with the recording of this call and any other relevant links. And if you're not a member and you're on this call, welcome. We're glad that you're joining us. You can always go to those links, to the resources and the recordings. We are housing them at our website, greensboro.org/COVID-19. Greensboro.org/COVID-19. We are still ranking low in our census participation rate. I did mine this morning. So if you have gotten that mailing and have got a little bit of time, please do sit down at your computer. It doesn't take long at all, and go ahead and fill out that form online. Very easily done. So we need to boost our participation rates in the census. It means extra funding for our community, for our state. The representation and the funding that we need are all tied to that census count. So please do that. They're going to ask you questions about who is in your house as of April 1st. I got a feeling we're going to have a pretty high count, considering I've got 2 college-age kids home now on April 1st, or will be home on April 1st. So please help us do that. Today's topic, and if you'll look if you'll go into the chat function of this program, we'd love for you to put your thoughts, put your questions, anything that you'd like answered in that box. Today we're going to talk about coping skills in a crisis. It is admittedly a little touchy-feely, but I read an article the other day that was very interesting that said a lot of what we're feeling right now in the midst of this is grief. And how do you cope with grief? How do you cope with all of these feelings that we're having? And so we have brought on an expert in helping us to cope with what we're feeling right now and how to keep ourselves going, because that's the one thing we've got to do, is keep moving forward in this time of uncertainty. So Abby Donnelly is joining us today. She is the founder of the Leadership and Legacy Group and works closely with business owners and C-suite leaders on the leadership side of succession and exit. Originally from Poughkeepsie, New York, Abby's career includes leadership roles with Procter & Gamble, Sandler Training, and she has a master in statistics from the University of Florida. She serves on a number of our community boards, including First Bank, as well as the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. Abby, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Brent. It's good to be here.
Well, as you heard me say, there are a lot of different feelings and a lot of things, a lot of angst out there these days. If you're like me, you're constantly refreshing your Twitter feed. You're reading constantly. A lot of the news isn't that great. And so talk to us a little bit about what we need to do ourselves, because you've got leadership and management and a lot of folks on this call who have to maintain forward progress, that have to be rocks for their employees, that really need to take care of themselves in this time. And how do we do that? Abby, give us some tips on how we do that.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And I've got a number of tips that I'd like to share today. I'd like to start out by reminding all of us that when we get on planes, they always say put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as we're trying to figure out how to calm our own anxieties and fears. The best way we can do that is to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. I was reading, a zillion New York Times articles and other articles that are coming across the internet constantly. And Governor Cuomo said that worse than the virus is the fear that we're dealing with. And recently I read a newsletter by Spartan Planning. They're a local financial planning firm, and they're experts in behavioral finance. And some of the research that they brought into the newsletter said that it's the uncertainty that's actually the most damaging to us. And so our stress tends to peak when uncertainty is at its highest. And so facing the uncertainty is often far worse than knowing with certainty a negative specific outcome. And, it's counterintuitive that that's the case, but right now what we're facing is a massive amount of uncertainty. And we're trying to get more certainty by staying abreast of the news and, trying to figure out what the implications are for what we're dealing with. But it's really hard to sort it out. And one of the Harvard Business Review articles that I read that was similar to the one that you talked about, Brent, around grief, talked about how our stress and fear around uncertainty is contagious. And so I'd like to share a number of strategies that I think could be helpful, but I'd like to invite everybody that's listening to get out a pen and a piece of paper. And as I walk through some of the strategies, I'd invite you to challenge yourself by asking, how can this apply to me? My experience is that when we're stressed out, it's easy to dismiss what might be helpful strategies because we're overwhelmed already, and taking in another piece of information can feel like it's too much. So my hope is that by the time that we're done today, you'll have at least one strategy, if not several, that you can use to help you cope. So does that sound good? You can write in the chat, yes, Abby.
Yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in.
All right, very good. So the first strategy is we need to give voice to and acknowledge our reality. We have to name it and describe the impact it's having on you. So for me, this whole process and this whole experience feels very surreal. There are days when I sit in my home office and I think, well, the rest of the world is living their normal life. And then I open up email and my email is blown up and there's a zillion new pieces of information about how things are going crazy, and the number of new cases diagnosed is skyrocketing, and on and on. And so if we can give voice to it, acknowledge it, name it, and describe the impact, then we have the opportunity to release it. It's been amazing how when I'm working with clients over the years and we can give voice to, acknowledge, and name their particular set of emotions or how they see the situation, there's a massive relief on their face. And so whether you do that with friends or with peer groups or with colleagues at work or other parents, if your kids are at home with you all day, it can literally kill us if we hold stuff in. So it sounds simple to do, but it's not necessarily easy because it's hard. We often have a hard time kind of describing how we're feeling. But I would suggest starting there. The second strategy that I would offer is we need to create some sense of control. We all want to feel like we have control and stability in our lives, but at times like this, that sense of control can be threatened. And while we can't control this virus, we can't control the economy, we can't control what other people do, so we're trying to figure out what we can control. And if we can't put our finger on that, then it's easy to get caught up in our heads with stories that are swirling about what's going to happen to us. What's going to happen to my health? What's going to happen to our job? What's going to happen to our paycheck, our bills? And then we can swirl on what that all means. And before we know it, we've painted this really scary picture of misery and doom, and then we lock into it and dwell on it. And dwelling on that is not going to help keep us healthy, strong, or creative. And the best way for us to move through this is to stay healthy, strong, and creative. So a way of dealing with that is to challenge the belief. Is that really what's going to happen? Or is that my swirl on it, kind of turning it into the worst case scenario? Asking ourselves, are there other possible outcomes beyond this doom scenario that I've created? Are any of those possible outcomes plausible? And if we can look at one of those and pause long enough to allow for the possibility of a plausible outcome that's different than the doom and gloom, then that's often enough time to open up some new pathways. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday evening, I was watching dinner. I was watching a TV show after dinner. And, I'm a morning person. So as I was watching the show, I was kind of starting to wind down to get ready for bed. And at about 8:20, my husband, Jim, came downstairs and he said, I'm going to run out to Lowe's. And I remember thinking, no, you can't leave the house. Don't run out to Lowe's. And I started swirling on this belief that if he went out to Lowe's, then he was going to catch coronavirus and he was going to come home and he was going to be sick and I was going to be sick and our whole world would be, just torn apart by that one decision. And then I paused and I said, wait a minute. There are some other plausible beliefs or plausible outcomes from this that paint a very different picture. And so that pause gave me enough time to think about a different way of responding to his comment and recognize that the world was not necessarily going to fall apart if he went to Lowe's Foods to get something for tomorrow's meals. Some things that you can do to grab control and get a better sense of it is, first, stop reading every article. There's so much information out there and it can be incredibly overwhelming and it can really work us up. There's some other things that we can do is we can reflect upon some of the routines that have served us really well over the course of our lives and try to either find a way to keep them going. Get up at the same time every morning, do your regular morning routine. Or if you can't do your regular morning routine, like, say you go to a yoga class every day. Well, you can't go to the yoga class today, but maybe you can do yoga with a friend on Zoom. So you have the same routines, just adapting a little bit. Routines can provide us with a huge sense of stability and control. Another thing that you can do is pick one small thing that you can build into your day every day that brings you joy. So for me, I love to blast some of my favorite songs just for 3 to 5 minutes and dance around my living room. So I turn on Love Shack and start dancing. Maybe it's calling a friend. Maybe it's going into your pantry and looking at those things that you bought 3 years ago that still haven't expired and figuring out how you can use them for dinner tonight. Something different and creative to do that will bring you a little bit of control and joy. The third strategy that I've got for coping is to remind yourself of who you are and the strengths that you've relied upon in the past that enable you to successfully navigate previous crises and use them liberally. So when we face periods like this of a lot of stress and uncertainty, it's easy to forget who we are. We get so caught up in the chaos around us. We're reading the news, and those reports are changing every hour. We're working remotely. Our kids are at home. Our job is either gone, or maybe we're working double time, or maybe our work has gotten so sparse that we don't really have a whole lot that's filling our time. And so the truth is that we may not have been through this crisis before, but certainly we have faced other crises. And so if we can reflect on what we did then to get through it, maybe we can apply those to this crisis today. A fourth strategy that I think can be really helpful is reaching out to others. There's no question that this is a global situation. This morning I was on the phone with a good friend of mine who's in Switzerland, and they've been sheltering in place for 2 weeks now. And she's feeling the same kind of pain and fear and anxiety that all of us are feeling, because this is a massive disruption for everybody. And we're all trying to adjust to create some sort of new normal. So I think taking time out every day to talk to someone that you care about, certainly if you are leading an organization, you've got to communicate. And we can underestimate how much communications are really important when we're in a leadership role like that. But for all of us, I think it's taking time to talk to someone that you work with, someone that you're friends with, calling a neighbor. Our Rotary Club met Monday on Zoom, and we had 50 people with about 40 faces showing up on video on the Zoom call. And it was so nice to reconnect with the people that we see in person every week in this setting, and create the opportunity for us to remind ourselves of what we're all about and the relationships that we have with each other. So reach out to others. And then the last one I was going to share today is called the Slight Edge. And it's where you pick one thing. My theory on this is this time is going to be hard no matter what. We are all doing things and having to learn things that we've never had to learn or do before because of the circumstances. And so I'm thinking about, how can I make this time an opportunity to thrive afterwards? What can I do to make good use of the time that I've got and the circumstances I'm in to make the outcome better, make my life better, make my business better, make my family better afterwards? And so the idea of the Slight Edge is that you think about what you'd like to make better. Maybe you've got some goals that you've set for the year. Maybe you've got some tasks that you haven't gotten to that now might be a good time to think about. And the idea of the Slight Edge is that you spend, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, that you can work on that will make, your life or your work or your career better or stronger. And so if you do it just 5 minutes a day, at the end of a week, it's 35 minutes that you've spent on that. And if you look over the course of a month, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes that you've now invested in something. And so a couple of things that I'm doing, I walk every morning anyway, and that's one of the routines that I'm keeping stable. We get up at 6 o'clock every morning, and we're out by 6:20, and we do a walk. And we've been extending our walks because we've got a little more flexibility without a commute to work every day. And but in addition to that, I've added a second workout, maybe not every day, but 3 or 4 times a week. And it's one of those things that I've been talking about doing for a long time, and doing some strength training. And so I've been doing that, and I'm going on my 3rd week now of building that in and incorporating it. And it feels good to know that I've added that in. Now, that's not 5 minutes. I'm doing a little bit more than that. But so that's one thing. We're also cooking a little bit more because we've got a little bit more time and a little bit less food options, fewer food options. So things like that. I'm trying to get some reading done that I haven't taken the time to do in the past. And I'm working on my business. So some of those things, even just 5 minutes a day. I've got some other ideas. Maybe you read 5 pages in a book. Maybe you do 100 jumping jacks. Maybe you clean out a different drawer in your kitchen or cabinet. Maybe you just make it a point to drink a glass of water. I've been trying to do more of that as well. Maybe you take 5 minutes to pray. We all could use some prayers these days. Maybe you get out a daily tip book and read a tip. There are a lot of great books out there that have tips every day. There are online classes that you can sign up for, many of which are free. So something that will make you feel better and stronger about where you are and what you're doing when this is behind us. And the thing is that this will be behind us someday, I hope soon.
I think that's the key, Abby, is understanding that this is temporary in nature. You're right; it's uncertain as to how long it'll go, but it is temporary in nature.
Yep. So I found a quote that I really liked by Viktor Frankl. And you may know that Viktor was in a concentration camp during World War II. And he's written some very profound pieces. And they're short reads, but they're very deep. And one of the quotes that he shares is, when we are no longer able to change a situation, which I think we all feel pretty powerless to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And so I'm trying to look at this as an opportunity, to the extent possible, to change myself, and I invite you to change yourself for the better. And so what I hope is that some of the strategies that I talked through today, if you looked at each one and said, how can this apply to me, that maybe you found something that you can use that will help you cope as we work through what I hope will only be a couple more weeks. But since we don't know when it's going to end, I'm preparing that it could be a lot longer.
Yeah. Abby, those are great tips for everyone, and we really appreciate it. And to your point, I mean, we're starting to see a lot of new material on the internet be opened up for free. So online classes that are being opened up at no charge at colleges and universities. And so I think there's going to be an awful lot of opportunity to go do some very productive things while we're working remotely that we may not have had a chance to do before, and perhaps even build some new habits in that regard.
That's a great point. There's lots of wisdom out there about how long it takes to build a habit. And, the standard piece that I've read is 21 days. And I've also read that refuted. Other people have said that sometimes it can be faster than that. Sometimes it takes a lot longer. Depends on the habit, depends on you, etc. But either way, this is a great time to institute some of those changes. And maybe with intention or by default, some of them will stick.
So, Abby, you mentioned in today's day and age, or especially right now, communicating with our employees is important. Talk a little bit more about that and why that's so important, and ways that we need to be doing that.
Well, I think these days, with everybody feeling so much stress and so much anxiety, it's particularly important to communicate frequently and provide that voice of leadership and calm and reassurance and hope to the folks that are working with us or for us, as the case may be. And so, the challenge is that everybody's got their own life that they're trying to figure out right now. And with school being out, a lot of employees are having to deal with a new set of circumstances that they had very little time to prepare for, which is that their kids are at home right now. And I see that Mike wrote in the chat room, what about employees that are working on the manufacturing floor, but their management team is working remotely? And, that's even more reason to over communicate to them, because it's not just about giving them clarity on what's going on. It's about supporting them. It's about checking in on them. It's about giving direction on where the company is going and how you're planning on dealing with the ever-changing demands on the business and on each of them. So if you think that you're communicating a lot, I would say a rule of thumb is probably, double it, because every minute it seems that the world is changing, and we've got to make sure that our folks know that we care about them and we have a plan, and we're going to execute that plan to the absolute best of our ability. So
that's great. Did you see the other question in there about mobile apps or communication tools you found particularly helpful in working and living remotely?
Well, I don't know that I've got the corner on any, fancy tools. I think these days Zoom is the hero of coronavirus, because everybody seems to be using Zoom. Obviously, Skype and Microsoft Teams are some other tools that you can use. I have also found that, when you're connecting with people, sometimes the phone is one of the best ways to do it, because even though you don't get to see someone's face, you do get to hear some tonality in it, and certainly you can hear the words. And sometimes there's comfort in not having someone see your face. If you're going through some really difficult times, and it can be emotional for us, being on the phone can feel a little bit safer.
That's true. That's true.
But if anybody else has any mobile apps or communications tools, please write them in the group chat so that others can see them. And if not, we can read them off to you.
We may need some teenagers involved in this. I get the feeling that they're really, really versed at this.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Well, and it looks like we've got some folks working on remote worker solutions. So great. Thank you, Nikki, for adding that to the list. So,
And,
Abby, I know you've got another event like this coming up. Just kind of, if we could wrap up this part of the call today, give us some things to think about as we're headed out, and talk to us a little bit about your Action Greensboro call that's coming up.
Yeah, so I'm delighted. Cecilia invited me to do the Action Greensboro call, which is a week from today. It's at noon, and it's on Facebook Live. And there's a description of it that you can find through the Chamber's newsletter. It's called Survive Now, Thrive Later, Business Strategies for Surviving and Thriving in Challenging Times. And so that's going to be much more focused on what are some things that you can look at for your business to survive through this period of time, and then what can you do to position your business now to thrive when this is behind us. And it will be behind us. So that's the plan, and I would love for anyone to join us for that. And then the other thing I was going to offer is on my website, which is leadershiplegacygroup.com. If you go under the resources, there's a place where it says free tools, free calls. And so for the next couple of weeks, while we're in this COVID-19 crisis, I'm offering 20-minute executive coaching calls. If you've got something that you want to talk about, or you got an idea to bounce off or something like that, there are a number of times in a calendar or sign up that you can just sign up yourself, and be happy to talk and support anyone through that time. So if it feels like help to you, please call.
Abby, that's really, really generous of you, and we'll make sure that we get that link out in our email that'll be going out to everyone this afternoon. But that's really generous. Thank you for that offer.
Thanks.
Well, Abby, we'll thank you again one more time for joining us. We really, really do appreciate you being on, and it's been a crazy couple of weeks, and that's why we wanted you on kind of as we wind down this week. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend in Greensboro. Probably a lot of people need to just take a deep breath and have a good weekend and recharge. And you've given us some opportunities to think about ways that we can recharge over the weekend and be ready to go on Monday. So again, thank you for that. Thank you. Before we go, there's a new thing that we have been working on diligently as our manufacturers are pivoting to start producing things that are going to be needed for this COVID-19 battle. And so I'm going to ask David Ramsey, who works with our economic development. He's our senior vice president for economic development and works with these manufacturers along with Meredith Berger, who have built this new tool. And so, David, would you describe to everyone what this new tool is and how they can take a look at it, and most importantly, how our manufacturers can communicate with each other using it?
Sure can, Brent. Thanks. I'll be very brief. So we do have a new tool at the request of our existing manufacturers. Meredith has messaged with most of them by now to release this via email. And it's a way for our manufacturers to get in touch with each other, suppliers for medical device, medical equipment, and other essential products. You know, we have more manufacturing workers here in Guilford County than any other place in North Carolina. So we can manufacture our way to some degree out of this crisis. So I'm going to put the information here in the chat forum for everyone to access the website. Take a look at that, and please, we are limiting that to essential supplies, medical devices. Most of our manufacturers we've spoken with have already pivoted and begun to manufacture for the medical industry and healthcare industry. So there it is. If you'd like to take a look at the forum, we'd love for you to check it out and see how you can contribute.
I appreciate it, David. Thank you to you and to Meredith and to Holly West and Megan Mabry for making this happen. We just don't know who's out there who might be interested in providing medical supplies, manufacturing medical supplies. You can put a manufacturer of hand sanitizer in touch with a packaging operation so that we can make this happen and make it happen quickly. And so that's the idea behind this. And we did it rapidly because that's what everybody's doing these days, is working rapidly and getting solutions thrown up there as quickly as we possibly can. That's what the crisis is bringing out the best in everyone in Greensboro. And I appreciate everything that you've done for this. And I appreciate everybody on the call. Again, I said it's been another week that's felt like a year. We are going to have a beautiful weekend. I hope everybody enjoys it. On Monday, we'll have another daily action call. We will be talking to Walker Sanders with the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. If you would like to help those in need through this crisis, you can certainly participate by giving to the fund that has been established by the United Way and the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. They're going to be on the line, or Walker's going to be on the line, and hopefully Michelle Geathers-Clark as well, to talk about that fund, to talk about what they're planning on using those funds for, if you have a need, how you apply, all of those sort of things, everything behind that. And so they'll join us on Monday at 3 o'clock. Until then, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody again as we start a new week on Monday at 3 o'clock. Thank you again for everybody being on the call. Abby, thanks again so much for your wisdom. And
Thank you, Brent.
We'll talk to you all again soon. Thank you, Abby. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.